tree of life, the temptation, duality. The late philosopher and esoteric author Alvin Boyd Kuhn provides us with some of his insights surrounding biblical iconography, the archetypes in some of the ancient stories that we have all over the world, but definitely in the West. Let's jump in. The tree of life, Revelation 22, verse 2. In the middle of its street and on either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. The significance of the poetic assertion that the leaves of the tree shall be for the healing of the nations is of transcendent value. Why is it the leaves, and not the roots or the trunk or branches, are to heal mankind is the point of the keen allegorical reference that must be brought out. The instruction for us here lies hidden in the realization that the leaves are the periodical and distinctly cyclical manifestation of the life of a tree. They appear on the surface of the perennial plant in regular cycles, emerging and fading with the seasons. The life of the permanent body of the tree annually pushes out beyond its previous boundaries and builds for itself a new extension of the body through which it can experience a new era of growth. All right, so the way trees grow in nature, this is the ultimate symbol, not only in the West, but the tree known as the tree of life is the ultimate archetypal symbol for mankind, for self-reflecting beings, because the tree represents life itself. But part of the reason why it does is because of the way a tree grows, which is a spiral, a vortex cone, the way that it sheds its previous form and expands from within to outgrow and move into a new form. The tree represents this perfect union between sky and earth, because half of the tree is reaching for the sky. It's surrounded by air, and the other half is rooted in the ground and in darkness. And we know from Hermetic teachings that all seeds essentially cannot germinate unless they're in darkness. They don't know which way is up, so to speak. They don't know which way the light or the sun is, unless, of course, they are surrounded by darkness. So therein lies that wonderful paradox known as duality. And essentially, that's what all theology is trying to mitigate, this paradox of duality. Spirit and matter, light and dark, form and formlessness, finite and infinite. The permanent soul of being must put itself forward to exercise a new embodiment constantly and recurrently. The soul of the tree has its seasonal experience in this transient vehicle. It produces its fruit and withdraws at the cycle's end, appropriating the products of its annual activity in the leaf, but leaving the outer body of that leaf to wither and die off in the winds of autumn. So of course, the leaf is the part that is the most visual representative of transformation. The trees change color throughout the year in many trees, and they also change size and shape. They're the most apparent things that you see when you look at a tree. And then, of course, they drop off in the winter, leaving just the skeleton of the tree. And then, of course, in the spring, renewal occurs. So the leaf represents transformation, because it's essential for human beings, self-reflecting beings, to understand that nature is constantly coming back to itself. Nature works in cycles. Nature is self-renewal. That's what transformation itself is. It's transforming through self-renewal. So this deeper knowledge that we have access to when we're centered spiritually, this awareness of true divine nature within man is actually real health. And I would even echo the Toltec here, because in the Toltec teachings, they tell you that man's primary reason for working with and engaging with the spirit is a reason of health or healing. The tree teaches us irrefutably and inescapably that permanent and eternal part of life, namely the soul of divine consciousness, periodically puts forth into manifestation an arm of its power, which expresses itself in a cycle of birth, growth, maturity, decay, and death. So the tree can be seen as a symbol of cyclical reincarnation through this process of seed germinating, creating a sapling, which creates a tree, which creates leaves, which cyclically drop and wither and renew and transform, which create flowers or fruits, and then those fruits and flowers eventually create more seeds. And thus you have a new tree being born from the original tree. Thus, the tree of life literally represents life itself as a cycle of ever-renewing transformation and/or reincarnation. Why was man tempted? It is necessary next to extract from the allegory the hidden meaning of the puzzling item of the temptation of the woman by the serpent and the man by the woman. To tempt is to present to the intended victim or subject a lure or prospect of an appealing or desirable nature with the hope that they may bite on it and thus fall into the design trap set by the tempter. But I'd like to point out etymologically that the word tempt, the root word, etymologically is temp, and temp in Latin refers to time. Like in music, tempo is time. So the idea of a temptation is really to bind something in time. And that can have a negative connotation because spirit is timeless. Spirit is infinite. It is unbound. And so to tempt something or somebody or to tempt a soul is to bind it in time. And this again is the original paradox of spirit and matter. Duality. Spirit, which is infinite, bound in some sort of space-time form, thus creating this split in the psyche, creating the paradox, creating the struggle, the yin and yang. The word itself, temptation, comes either from the Latin tento, to try, to test, to experiment with, or from tempto, to tempt, at the time, or an attempt bound in time. If from tento, it would carry the meaning to give trial to try out in actual practice, to test, or to put the test to the trial. In this reference, it would indicate that the temptation to which God subjects all of his creatures who are, be it remembered, the cells or members of his own body, is nothing more nor less than his sending them out into the incarnate life, his planting of them in his gardens, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and grow by developing their latent capacities and powers through overcoming the opposition of inert matter in the duality of life. Back to duality. So the temptation of man literally means taking spirit, putting it in form, and then the spirit has to learn by overcoming opposition and struggles and limitations. And that's how it learns to become more expansive and become more aware. In the book of Revelation, the 7 great rewards are promised to him that overcometh. Esoteric author Alvin Boyd Kuhn wrote, "To grow to higher beauty, spirit must overcome the inertia of matter. An aeonial victory can be gained only as the outcome of incarnational effort is continued until the goal is attained. So God's sons must continually reincarnate. This is to subject them to the tensions and prevails between them and the force of matter. And this is the ordeal, the trial, the testing, the tension, as it might be better named, instead of the tempting. If, on the other hand, the word derives from tempto, it stands related to an even more significant background of the meaning. It would be revealed at once as being connected with the Latin word tempus, time. To tempt a man would then be to bring his soul down from the realms of spirit, where all religions have asserted that consciousness lies above the human apperception of time, where time does not exist, and proceed to throw his soul under the illusion of time sense. So what he's really saying is that in the body, in the form, man has a self-reflective ability to become conscious of his eternal nature. The eternal nature is his nature beyond time. And there you go, beyond the temptation. So the temptation is there to bind you to time so that you can transform beyond it and become conscious of that while in the body. And then when you do become conscious of that while in the body, that's known as resurrection. This type of consciousness comes through the reduction of higher mind to a lower tempo of vibration as it falls under the limitations of brain activity. And it would be hard to pick a truer psychological definition of the situation confronting the soul in the Genesis recital than this very one here depicted. It is exactly what happens in the genesis of humanity. An incarnation does expressingly subject the soul to a reduction to the time sense. So the temptation is just another glyph or symbol for the descent of the soul into mundane life, with the hidden accentuation on the sad lessening of the soul's powers under the constraints of the flesh. It is in the Greek philosophy of esotericism that one finds the rationalization of the soul's loss of divinity in exchange for human powers of consciousness so thoroughly illuminate. It in reality constitutes the loss of paradise. For what is paradise but a higher dimension of consciousness? And the loss of that is being bound in a physical form or tempted in time, and then not being aware of your eternal nature or your timeless nature. I'd also like to point out that the word paradise, which is Latin-based, etymologically means para, dice. So para means close to, and dice is the root word for Dios, meaning God. So paradise means close to God. So man's fall out of paradise is him forgetting his divine and eternal nature, his nature beyond the body, his spirit. Few have ever asked the question, why the temptation came first from the serpent to the woman, and from her to the man. Very interesting perspective. This is a very good question, and very few people have the inclination to even ask, why is the story set up this way? Why does the time, tempo, the temptation come first from the serpent to the woman, and then from the woman to the man? Here we go. This is pretty interesting. The point is that the cyclical law tempts woman first because woman typifies matter. And this word matter is where you get the word mother. It's the same etymological word. This is also why matter, which is earth, is called Mother Earth. The reason why the serpent, it goes from the serpent to the woman first, is because she's the one, the gatekeeper of birth. Through her, the tree of life is planted as a seed, and it grows, the eternal mother of all life. And matter is the first element visibly projected on the scene of creation. Matter must be produced and brought to organic form so as to generate the highly complex mechanisms of brain and nervous system, before consciousness and spirit, the male principles, can be brought to birth and function. And why does it do this? Why does the serpent tempt her first? Because she's the one who gets the crowning jewel of maintaining self-conscious human beings by giving birth to them. It's that simple. That's why it's called Mother Earth. Chief Orville, Looking Horse of the Lakota, once said, "The earth is a source, not a resource," meaning that the earth sustains us, and we should respect it, not just exploit it for profit. As matter evolves, it gives rise to the soul, creating a connection in its later stages of its evolutionary cycle. When the earth, through its long journey, produces life forms capable of experiencing higher consciousness, it invites man. The word man comes from the Sanskrit verb meaning to think, the first thinker. It invites man to unite with it in partaking of the living experience and eating its glorious fruits. This idea aligns with the biblical account that God formed man from the dust of the earth, which can be interpreted as God creating humanity from atomic matter. The woman. There you go. If you also read the Toltec, if you read the Fifth Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz, he breaks down a really, really beautiful version of paradise and Adam and Eve and the tree of life and tree of knowledge. And so we just discovered that the tree of life is life itself, spirit and form. But why in the story there's two trees? There's the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. And Don Miguel Ruiz so eloquently puts forth, which it's simply true, the way it used to be known when we had our minds wrapped around it and we were in touch with our spirit. The reason why there's two trees in the garden is because it represents duality. It represents yin and yang. It represents the dualistic nature of life, the paradox and struggle of being a spirit in form, being a spirit in matter, being a spirit in the body, from earth to sky, and from seed to tree, and from sky back to earth, into the cycle of life, forever, eternally.